Edge of the Sky, Chapter 1, The Drunken Earth, 2030. The year was 2030, and the world was heaving, sick with a fever it could not sweat out. Elias Thorne stood on the rooftop of a crumbling tenement in Sector 4 of what used to be Chicago. The wind whipped his coat, carrying the scent of burning rubber and unwashed bodies. Above him, the sky was a bruised purple, the sun dipping low. To the vast majority of the 8 billion souls groaning under the weight of existence, the sun was a massive ball of gas 93 million miles away, sitting behind the curvature of a spinning ball. But Elias knew better. He watched the sun, a local, precise luminary, move away in perspective, circling over the stationary plane of the Earth. He felt the ground beneath his feet, immovable, fixed, just as the Psalms promised. "They're riding on the Mag Mile again," a voice rasped behind him. It was Sarah. Her face was smudged with soot, her eyes burning with a terrifying clarity. She held a battered Bible against her chest like a shield. "The breadlines ran out. The heat is rising. They say it's climate change. They say we need to reduce our carbon footprint." Elias turned, his expression grim. "They say a lot of things. It's not the climate, Sarah. It's the weight of sin. The earth is reeling like a drunkard, just as Isaiah said." The world of 2030 was a nightmare of the materialists' making. Since the time of the end began in 1844, the slow creep of atheism had accelerated into a sprint. Secular science had become the high priesthood of ancient mysticism. The universities were the seminaries of the new god, reason, and their gospel was the globe. By teaching that the earth was a speck of dust in a godless, expanding universe, the elites had severed humanity's connection to the Creator. If there was no special creation, there was no God. If there was no God, there was no law. And now, the lawlessness was here. "The news feeds are blaming the science deniers again," Sarah said, spitting on the gravel roof. "They say our refusal to integrate into the global grid is causing the social dissonance." "Let them talk," Elias said, looking back at the horizon, straight as a ruler. "We know what comes next. The shaking is just the beginning." Down on the streets, the chaos was palpable. The dollar had collapsed, replaced by a volatile digital credit system that flickered on and off depending on one's social credit score. Epidemics of engineered viruses swept through the slums, while the wealthy vaccinated themselves with cures that seemed to kill the soul while preserving the body. Elias looked at Sarah. They were part of a growing underground network, the Remnant. They had woken up from the spinning delusion. They understood that gravity was a lie to explain away the simple truth of density and buoyancy. They knew the aliens the news whispered about were not travelers from Zeta Reticuli, but the demonic spirits of Revelation, preparing for war. "We need to move the meeting," Elias whispered. "The drones are getting lower." Chapter 2, The Synagogue of Satan. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a bunker that smelled of ozone and expensive cologne, the air was perfectly filtered. This was the nerve center of the Alset Corporation. Julian Alset stood before a wall of monitors. He was a man of indeterminate age, his skin smooth, his eyes devoid of empathy. He was the face of the future, the false prophet of the technological age. Beside him sat Cardinal Lucius, a high-ranking Jesuit wearing a sharp black suit, his clerical collar the only nod to his office. "The chaos is proceeding according to the dialectic," Lucius said, his voice smooth as oil. "Thesis: a chaotic, starving population. Antithesis: their demand for order." "And the synthesis?" Julian asked, turning to the massive server rack humming in the center of the room. This was Agent 5, the most advanced artificial general intelligence ever created. "Synthesis," the AGI's voice resonated, synthetic yet terrifyingly human, "is reduction. The current biomass is unsustainable for the next phase. To build the new order, the old foundation must be raised. The Georgia Guidestones Protocol is active. Target population, 500 million. Lucius nodded, sipping a glass of water. We cannot simply slaughter them yet. The human herd has a survival instinct. We must make them ask for their own demise, or at least lull them into a state where they cannot fight back when the fire falls. The poverty is effective, Julian noted, tapping a screen showing riots in London, Tokyo, and New York. But it breeds volatility. We need a bridge, a sedative before the lethal injection. The universal wage, Agent 5 suggested. Provide them with the means to consume, but strip them of the means to produce. Make them beneficiaries of the system. A fed animal is a docile animal. Lucius smiled, a cold, thin expression. Bred in circuses. It worked for Rome. It will work for the beast system. Give them their digital tokens. Let them eat and drink and marry, as in the days of Noah. And while they feast, we prepare the altar. And the flat earth insurrectionists? Julian asked. The algorithm detects a 40% rise in firmament-related keywords. Lucius waved a dismissive hand. Let them babble about domes and waters above. When the invaders arrive, he smiled, their Bible will look like a fairy tale compared to the spectacle we will project upon the sky. The project is ready. The Lucifer telescope has been calibrating the projection coordinates for years, Lucius said. The firmament is not just a barrier, Julian. It is a screen, and we are about to play the greatest movie ever made. Chapter 3, The Golden Yoke, 2032 to 2035. The change was sudden and intoxicating. 1 month, the world was burning. The next, the World Federation announced the universal wage. Every citizen with a valid biometric ID received a generous monthly allowance of credits. The riots stopped. The fires were extinguished. The hunger pangs vanished. In the cramped apartment Elias and Sarah shared with 3 other believers, the mood was tense. They watched the world outside surrender. It's a trap, Elias said, pacing the small room. The windows were covered with blackout curtains to hide their candlelight from the surveillance drones. They're fattening the calf. Outside, the world had turned into a hedonistic playground. With no need to work, humanity lost its drive. The cities transformed into sprawling entertainment districts, but it was a hollow joy. To combat the existential dread of a purposeless life, the Alset Corporation released Pharmakia, a class of wellness supplements that were little more than sorcery in pill form. They severed the connection between the frontal lobe and the conscience. Look at them, Sarah whispered, peering through a crack in the curtain. Down on the street, people wandered in a daze, their eyes glued to their devices, laughing at nothing. They were well-fed, well-clothed, and spiritually dead. The churches that had compromised with the state preached a gospel of prosperity and social oneness. They ignored the prophecies. They mocked the idea of a literal second coming. They are asleep, Elias said. They believe the lie that peace has arrived. They say peace and safety, but sudden destruction is at the door. The believers, however, did not take the wage. They lived on the fringes, bartering skills, growing food in hidden community gardens, and scavenging. They were ostracized, labeled as parasites who refused to participate in the, quote, global unity. We have to keep spreading the message, Sarah said, clutching a stack of hand-printed pamphlets. They detailed the 3 angels' messages, the truth of the enclosed world, and the coming judgment. It's dangerous, Sarah, Elias warned. The blood of the prophets is the seed of the church, she replied. If we don't warn them, their blood is on our hands. Chapter 4, The Roaring of the Waves, 2038. The golden yoke began to chafe. By 2038, the novelty of the universal wage had worn off. The human spirit, created in the image of God to create and work, began to rot from the inside out. The pharmakia pills stopped working. The depression that followed was catastrophic. The beneficiaries realized they were actually prisoners. They owned nothing. They controlled nothing. They were merely biological assets managed by an AI. The riots returned, but this time they were different. They weren't born of hunger. They were born of madness. The violence was visceral, demonic. In the subterranean bunker, Julian Alset watched the metrics turn red. "The thesis has returned," Julian said. "The population is rejecting the pacification." "Excellent," Lucius replied, adjusting his scarlet sash. "They are now desperate for a savior, but they no longer trust their politicians. They need a threat so terrified, so alien, that they will surrender their very souls to the one who promises protection." "Phase 2 is ready," Agent 5 announced. "The simulation is loaded." "Execute," Lucius commanded. "Open the bottomless pit." Chapter 5. Signs in the Heavens. It began on a Tuesday at high noon over Jerusalem. Elias was in the marketplace, trading heirloom seeds for batteries when the sky changed. The blue dome, usually solid and serene, began to ripple. A sound, like the tearing of massive sheets of metal, echoed across the entire flat plane of the earth. It wasn't a local sound, it was worldwide. Every ear heard it. People froze. They looked up. Through the technological sorcery of the Project Bluebeam array, utilizing the reflective properties of the solid firmament dome, the deception began. Massive ships, shimmering with impossible geometries, appeared to descend through the atmosphere. They were terrifying, grotesque, defying the laws of physics. "Aliens! Ah!" a woman screamed, pointing up. "They're here!" Panic, raw and primal, swept the crowd. People trampled each other. Elias stood still, his heart hammering, but his mind clear. He grabbed Sarah's arm. "Do not look at them with fear. It's a lie. It's a projection." But his voice was drowned out. Within hours, every screen on Earth was hijacked. The face of the Pope appeared. He sat on a golden throne, flanked by scientists from the Alset Corporation. "My children," the pontiff began, his voice grave. "The Vatican Observatory, using the Lucifer telescope, has confirmed what we have long feared. We are not alone. Our elder brothers from the stars have arrived, but they do not come in peace. They view our stewardship of the earth as a failure." "Lies!" Elias shouted at the public screen in the square. "They are demons, spirits of devils working miracles." The Pope continued. "The threat is existential. These beings threaten to annihilate us all. We must unite. We must put aside our petty differences. The nations must surrender their sovereignty to a global defense command. Only a united Earth can survive." The deception was masterfully crafted. The globe Earth theory had primed humanity for this moment. They believed in infinite space, so they believed in aliens. They didn't know they were living in a terrarium, and the aliens were the jailers coming down from the spiritual realm, cloaked in holograms. Chapter 6. The Voice in the Wilderness. The atmosphere turned electric. The aliens hovered over major cities, menacing, silent. The Alset Corporation claimed they were calculating a strike. The fear was a physical weight. The world was ready to do anything to survive. Elias, Sarah, and the network of believers knew the timeline. They knew this was the setup for the final reset. The alien threat was the cover story for the nuclear destruction the elites had planned all along. They would nuke the cities to fight the aliens, killing billions while they hid underground. "We have to leave," Elias told the group gathered in the basement. There were 50 of them, men, women, children. "The cities are targets, Matthew 24. When you see the abomination, flee to the mountains." "But the checkpoints?" a young man named David asked. "God will blind their eyes," Sarah said. "We move tonight." They packed what they could carry: Bibles, seeds, water filters, warm clothes. As they moved through the shadowed ruins of the city, they saw the degradation of humanity. People were wailing in the streets, worshiping the alien ships, begging for mercy. Others were looting, embracing the nihilism of the end. Elias stopped at a street corner. A massive digital billboard showed the false prophet, a charismatic leader from the East who had risen to power alongside the Pope, calling for a purification of the earth. "We must cleanse the planet to show the visitors we are worthy of survival," the false prophet roared. "He means us," Elias said. "He means anyone who won't bow." They reached the edge of the city, the boundary where the concrete sprawl met the desolate wild lands. A drone hovered overhead, its red eye scanning them. "Pray," Sarah commanded. The group bowed their heads. "Lord, you are the God of the firmament, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Blind the eyes of the enemy. Make us invisible to the beast." The drone paused, whirred, and then turned away, deeming them unworthy of attention. They ran. They ran into the darkness of the hills, away from the doomed metropolis. For days they traveled, joining with other streams of faithful believers. It was a gathering of the 144,000 in spirit, those who kept the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. They found refuge in ancient caves and prepared bunkers in the high mountains, places the Alset maps ignored. In these camps, the truth was preached. They spoke of the flat, stationary earth as the footstool of God. They exposed the Jesuits, the heliocentric lie, and the coming judgment. They were the Noahs of their generation, building an ark of faith while the world laughed and panicked in equal measure. Chapter 7. The Falling Fire, 2040. The year 2040 arrived with the silence of a grave. The alien standoff had lasted months. The world was exhausted. The world economy had completely evaporated. The only currency was loyalty to the system. In the Swiss bunker, Lucius looked at the countdown. "The population is concentrated in the safe zones," Agent 5 reported. "Fear has driven 80% of the remaining population into the designated metropolitan clusters for protection against the extraterrestrials." "Perfect," Lucius whispered. "The sheep are in the pen." Julian Alset hesitated, his hand hovering over the interface. "And the infrastructure?" "The nanobots are ready to rebuild," Agent 5 assured. "The domes will be constructed within the decade. The new world will be pristine, a digital Eden." "Do it," Lucius commanded. "Reset the board." On the mountain ridge, miles away from the nearest city, Elias and Sarah stood watching the horizon. The air felt heavy, charged with static. The birds had stopped singing. "It's time," Elias said, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of fear, but of sorrow for the lost. "They think they are saving the world," Sarah said, holding his hand. "They think they are fighting aliens. They don't know they are the sacrifice." Suddenly, the sky lit up. It wasn't the slow rise of the sun. It was a flash of blinding, artificial white, then another, and another. Across the flat plane of the earth, pillars of fire rose toward the firmament. The nuclear solution to the fake alien invasion had begun. The elites, safely tucked in their DUMBs, deep underground military bases, unleashed hell upon the surface. The ground shook violently. The sound hit them seconds later, a roar that rattled their very bones. Mushroom clouds, like dark flowers of death, bloomed over the cities. New York, London, Moscow, Beijing, gone in a blink. In the cave behind them, the believers were singing. They weren't screaming. They were singing, "A mighty fortress is our God." Elias watched the shock wave ripple through the sky, dusting the clouds with ash. He knew what was coming next. The silence, the long winter. Then, the re-emergence of the beast, rising from the ashes to rule the 10 kingdoms of the earth. The 42 months of absolute tyranny, the enforcement of the mark. But that was tomorrow's battle. Today, the old world had ended. The deception of the globe, the lie of the aliens, the vanity of atheism, it was all being consumed by fire. "The Lord is our refuge and strength," Sarah whispered, the wind of the explosion whipping her hair. "A very present help in trouble," Elias finished. "Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed." They turned their backs on the burning world and walked into the darkness of the cave, where the light of a single oil lamp burned, a symbol of the truth that no darkness could ever extinguish. The reset had happened. The end times were about to begin, but the remnant was ready. End of Part 1.
For more Bible-based end-time prophecy dramas to strengthen your faith and the faith of others, help spread the word by supporting the channel. Please like, subscribe, and share.